Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, a Core 4 parenting podcast blending soul and science-based strategies to empower pandemic moms like you, raising kindergarten-ready kids. I'm Cara Tyrrell, your host, a lifetime lover of littles, girl mom, early childhood educator, and conscious parenting coach who truly believes that how we connect and collaborate with our kids in the first 5 years is how we raise world-ready kids who will change this world. In today's episode, we're talking about shame, otherwise known as mom guilt, and how it affects us in our journey as a mom, both consciously and subconsciously. And our guest today is here to share her depth of knowledge and help us do that. Kyira Wackett is a licensed mental health therapist, facilitator, and creator, and has been speaking on topics related to mental health for over 10 years. She's also a toddler mom to a COVID baby. She lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband, Jordan, and her daughter, Everly. She's the owner of Adversity Rising, where she equips people with the confidence and the skills to write their own story. Today, she's going to talk to us, conscious, collaborative moms, about how to write our story in our parenting journey and in our relationship with our young kids. Kyira, thank you so much for being here. I've been eagerly awaiting this episode and recording with you because I just know you have so much to share with us, both as somebody who is a licensed psychologist and also a toddler mom who has lived through this pandemic. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here today.
So let's start with the pandemic mom piece. Because, you're so educated and so knowledgeable and you have all that science-backed information behind you. And you're also a COVID mom. You had a COVID baby. And I'm going to read your exact words here. You said, it's been an interesting experience navigating parenthood in the pandemic and has forced me to grow in a lot of ways personally and professionally to adapt to this new role. Can you tell us more about that? So many people feel this way right now.
Yeah, I think so. Just regardless of what anybody's education experience role is, I think, the universal truth is that parenting is quite literally the hardest thing that I think anybody has ever done, because we are not trained to be curious and to be exploring and to be experimenting. We are trained to do a job and do it well. And so the notion of being a parent and to constantly be in that iterative process of what my best looks like today looks different than yesterday, not just because my energy is different, but because I could quite literally have a different human in front of me today. If we do look at everything that happens with babies, with toddlers, their body, just physically how much they can grow in one night and how they're adjusting to a new body. And their brain's like, what do I do with this? I don't know how to grab things anymore. I don't know how to move. Plus the social, emotional, the mental, all of these things that their brains are going through. I think kind of tying together my professional training layered with the new mom piece, I would say that it has been kind of a polar experience. So I have felt so blessed to have the education to understand what's happening, to know how to talk about things, to know how to name emotions, to be super comfortable in that. I also have, I think, an even higher degree of pressure. So when it doesn't go, quote unquote, right, I have screwed this up. I'm supposed to know how to do this. If I am the therapist and I talk about shame and I talk about this and I can't stop the tantrum, or I can't get her to work through this experience or to be the kind person in the interaction, what good am I as a therapist too? And so I think there's been this sort of infusion of roles in a way that's really beneficial, but it has also really tainted that, again, going back to what we're taught in our culture of you do a job, you do it well. And your job is to keep excelling and getting better. And so then when I had Everly, I was like, well, wait a minute. Do I even know what I'm doing in the therapy room? Am I making this up? Is this even helpful? How do I know I'm really being supportive? It's interesting hearing you read my words back, because I know I filled them out a while ago and they still feel so true. The biggest thing I've had to learn through an exorbitant amount of resistance at first is that the only way that I can know anything is to admit that I know nothing. as
Mm.
a parent, and then really be excited about the process of creating a system that works for me and for her. And in my case, having a partner in the household for my husband, for myself, and for her, that is always evolving, that is always changing. And I can use my skills of communication there. I can use my skills of communication to say, how do we adapt? What didn't work? Whoa, that was definitely not gentle. Or, there was a moment I stopped being the parent and I was triggered by my own PTSD. Some of my own insecure attachment stuff from trauma growing up. I became a different person in that moment. Wow, how insightful for me to go, that had nothing to do with my daughter. It felt like it did. But now I need to be curious about that. And now I need to explore that piece. And so I think it's equally overwhelming, but also freeing when you just kind of take the approach of, you don't have to know anything. And in fact, I think we're better as caregivers when we admit that we know nothing. I think we're better as people when we admit we know nothing, certainly, but that we're just trying things out and we're exploring. And we say, even if I'm designing myself as an expert on shame, or in your case, really thinking about the expert role you take for people, we're in that position of saying expert still requires the other person to infuse it into what works for them. And that's what we're doing too.
Oh my gosh, I love so many things about this. First and foremost, the gratitude for your vulnerability to say that, because I feel that too. I totally get it. And, when we do stand up and take this expert role, we think we have to be perfect at it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now the mom to older teenagers. And when I slip up and when I don't do things the right way, the way I teach, I certainly hold for longer than I would like, a conscious shame about it. I had to apologize to my 17-year-old yesterday. And she said, "You didn't have to apologize to me." And I said, "I did, actually. Like, I did, because I knew that I was feeling shame around the words I chose and the tone I used. So let's talk about shame, because it is your area of expertise. And I feel like it also goes by the name of mom guilt, more consciously around the world. I feel like it's almost born into the experience of momming with us. It's the silent partner that joins us right from the very beginning. And is there a difference between conscious and subconscious shame in parenting?
I love this. I love everything about where we're going here. So I think to start off with the kind of first question of what is shame? And so shame, I think, depending on where people are listening from, there's been a lot more talk within the US around it, within some other countries too, where we're looking at shame on a broader spectrum, but still with some hesitance. What we know is that shame is an emotion. It's a universally experienced emotion. And it actually is kind of a specific form of fear. So it's a very, very tangible thing to identify when we go down the fear component, because fear is this, everyone's felt that kind of prickle on the back of your neck, or you've watched a scary movie, or you've jumped before. So we know what the fear response is. We know what it does. But shame is specifically a fear connected to belonging. So shame is the fear of not being worthy of connection, not being good enough, not being lovable. It's the internalization that you as a person are broken, flawed, not enough. And therefore you have to spend your life trying to make up for those deficiencies. And so shame is the trigger point anytime something happens that basically serves as a reminder to our deeply rooted beliefs about ourselves. And it's like, oh, you messed that one up. You better correct that or find a way to improve it, because you're going to show the flaw. We can know that it's true. We can know that we are garbage, but we can't let the world know. So we have to continue to perform as though we have it all together, or else people will leave, people will see, people will not love us, not accept us, whatever that might be. And for you and I, we can see that in our professional roles. But if we take it to that broader scale of mom guilt, it's this notion of we've created a belief system that all of us are supposed to know what we're doing. We're supposed to inherently love this role, be excited about this role all the time, know what to say. And we are living in a time of input overload. And I was talking to a client the other day and I was like, I think you got the worst end of the deal. She's got a just going to be a year-old child right now. And I was like, you spend any moment going on social media and you are inundated with inputs about how you could be doing it better. And they're meant to be helpful. They really are. Here's how we could do this. Here's this thing here. But what we're missing in that is that a lot of those things collude with our shame as, look, if you could perform this good or this well, you'd be better. If you could just rotate the books once a month, if you could just change out their toy, you have too many toys. If you could just pack better snacks and do these little homemade designs or come up with the new, at home Play-Doh making kit or something like that, then things would be better. And then when we don't hit the milestones, we don't do the things, we have a bad parenting day, or we're in ourselves. Similar to you, had the same thing where I was apologizing to my daughter over a word choice that I used. And she's almost 3, so she gets it, but also she doesn't, which I think sometimes makes it even worse because I'm like, I'm just doing this for me. At this point, I don't even know if you get it, but it just feels like we have to. The shame piece is that. And I think for moms, we know it takes a community. And I think a lot of us have been taught to come into that community performing still rather than completely open and vulnerable. And so the mom guilt comes from, okay, I can feel like I'm failing. And if I present it to the world, I better do it in a very specific and tactful way so that ultimately it just kind of gets a laugh. It gets more likes, it gets more exposure. And so I'm accepted for it. But I can't tell people, I don't know if I want to be a mom. I don't know if I know how to do this. Sometimes I wonder if I really did want kids, or half the time I love being a parent. And the other half the time, I wish I could just pack up and walk away just for like a few hours, just for a moment to not have to think about somebody else. And we don't talk about those things. And I think that is the root of it, is a life identity change without any space to grieve the loss of our identity before, or freedom to explore what this means for us now. But the expectation that we know how to do it and we're going to excel at it and we're going to love it while we do it. That, I think, is that basis when you say it kind of comes with the new mom card.
Wow. Oh, there's so many pieces in there that I could pull out, but I really want to highlight this new identity piece. That is key, right? That I say to people all the time, you are not Jesse's mom. You have a name, right? We have to continue to use your name. You have added mom to the list of things that you already are. And you were on a journey of discovery for the however many years until you became a mom. And that doesn't all just disappear. We are expanding your identity. So please, mamas who are listening to this, tap into that, and it will already kind of reset things just a little bit from a mindset and a perspective shift for you. So I really want to tap into this idea that shame is a trigger and an emotion, because we don't often think of it that way, right? We know we're triggered by our emotions. So if you're telling us shame is one, that's awesome. So then it's up to us to understand that when things like tantrums or meltdowns or big emotions, big voices, picky eaters, like whatever our triggers, our words are my triggers. I'm a linguist. When someone comes at me with an, I don't like that, that's a trigger for me. So if we're overlaying shame and redefining it as a shame trigger, that means that we have to own it. How can we take it to that next level and really process that this is our brain and our body telling us something?
Yeah. So I think to even back it up further, so if we go back to the explanation of what shame is, so shame being an emotion, shame being a fear that what we believe is the truth about ourselves, we are inherently broken, unworthy. Shame is basically coming in and saying, look, if you can perform at a certain level, everything will be fine. And what we have to really think about is we've been experiencing shame since we were little kids. So becoming moms wasn't the first time we felt shame. Even when you described that idea of the list of who we are and the things that we've done in the world, shame was attached to all those things too. It's just a different iteration. And now the stakes feel higher because this little human depends on us. And we know that there's a disproportionate amount of pressure and kind of bias towards moms in the world. But we've had it since we were little. It's the thing that made us dress a certain way to fit in with our friends. It's the thing that made us say things, to listen to the music our friends liked, to act a certain way, to talk back to our parents, to try things out, to go along with that, to get certain grades because we knew people with grades that were higher got treated differently. Shame got rooted in us because of our experiences, and also because of the reality that we live in a world built on ladder systems that says some people are better than others, whatever that might be, their body size, their race, their gender identity, sexual orientation, their socioeconomic status, education status. So coming into this role, all of us had stories that tied to all of these things. And we had developed maybe systems of operating. Many moms, I would say, I don't want to make a blanket statement because all of us handle it differently. Mm-hmm. And I think the majority of moms would identify kind of the way they've resolved to deal with their shame is to be a human giver. Human giver, meaning I'm going to do everything I can to take care of everyone. I'm going to be the perfectionist, constantly the person everybody can count on. You're probably the friend that everybody could go to. You're the one that was organized. You're the one that was excelling in all these other areas, friendship, career, all those components. And you did it all, and you did it well. If you were hosting a holiday get together, you had the planned out meal. Everybody loved all the things that you did, and you were the person everybody counted on. And you mastered the art of deflection as protection. So you would deflect any sort of, how are you? And be like, oh, I'm okay. You might tell just a little bit, just to kind of have a little bit of a connection, but you keep everybody at a distance. Because if you tell them just how hard things are, then they're going to know. Your shame brain says, no. If they get too close, they're going to find out that you're garbage and they're going to leave. You have to be okay enough. You can be a little vulnerable, but that's part of the performance. But you have to really keep people at a distance and make it about them. Now, enter mom. Enter, you got a new little one at home. And it's not just the fact that you have a little human and you're basically going through sleep deprivation, food deprivation. If somebody birthed their human, biologically had their child, your body is going through that. If you didn't, and you maybe adopted, use a surrogate, anything else, you're going through this idea of I'm not attaching to my kid in the same way. What am I broken? So there's all these elements with body connection. On top of that, every other relationship has suddenly changed and every other role has changed. And the majority of people listening to this have had a kid in the pandemic. So, on top of that, there's going to be a global crisis that we don't even know what's happening. And it's not just going to be COVID. It's going to be COVID. It's going to be war. It's going to be inflation. It's going to be RSV. It's going to be the worst flu season that we've seen in the US in years. And all of these sort of compounding pieces. Well, the trigger, because shame is a fear, and if we kind of think about fear in terms of an anxious response, trigger in this sense means some sort of external thing, real or perceived, is happening that's triggering a reaction in our body that says, oh, key up the hypervigilance, be on guard. Something is going on. So you described those words. So somebody saying to you, I don't like that. I think about, and I specialize in eating disorder work. When my daughter is having an experience around food or talks about her body, I get very triggered in a protective, but also hypervigilant way. I don't want to impose anything on her in terms of food rules. How do I know when I push her to eat something versus I don't? But the trigger could be something else. It could be somebody saying, oh, good for you that you're not trying to be it all as a new mom. And then you go, what's the subtle message there? Or, gosh, good for you that you're doing these things. Or, yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? Blah, blah, blah. And then you go, why do they think it's so hard for me? Am I not doing it well? And so whatever it is, it's something someone says, something someone does. It could be scrolling through social media at the end of the night, or even watching something on Netflix and you see somebody else you perceive as doing it better or worse or whatever it is. And boom, the trigger happens. And the result is that physiological response to the emotion. That point isn't problematic. Emotions are going to do that. We've all felt anxious. We've all felt mad. We've all felt sad. We've all felt shame. That's not going anywhere. The problem is the association then with, I need to get myself out of that as quickly as possible. So I'm going to go do something to avoid it, or go do something to kind of put a Band-Aid over the top of it so no one sees. That is the problem that we need to get to, is to say, we have to create space and systems to feel our distress so we can develop tolerance around it. So when you do say the thing and you go, gosh, I said the wrong thing. Did I yell at my kid? I had this happen recently. Everything needed to be done by a certain person. If mom was in the room doing something and dad walked in, she'd start screaming at dad. There was just something going on. And then we were exploring foot stomping and we were exploring these other things. And there was a moment I just didn't have the patience for it. We were going to be late for school. And I was like, Everly, enough. And I picked her up and walked her out of the bathroom and set her down. And I said, we're not going back in here and acting this way. You're being unkind and it's unsafe, because she was kind of flailing her legs around. No joke. About an hour later, I was sobbing on the phone to a friend and said, am I an abusive parent? by picking her up, by not being able to talk through it, by feeling like I got mad. That is where shame takes us, because then what you do as a result is you overcompensate. So now we go in and we try to make everything better with our kids, or we have to make up for it the next day, or we feel like we have to, take the next class, do the next thing. And now I better be able to, just even getting some of your mantras in your email list.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now I have to be able to do that. And if I can't keep calm the whole day when I have this skill, I have this tool, then I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. That feedback system is the thing we need to break. That feedback system is what takes the trigger to a reinforced shame system of thinking. The trigger isn't problematic. It's what we do with the trigger that's problematic.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I am learning so much from you. And what I'm hearing is that this is our experience. This is our journey. And, it's that idea of reaction versus response, right? Because it's going to trigger that knee-jerk reaction, that subconscious piece that just comes right out of us. Hey, Cara here, just popping in to ask you a quick question. Are you dealing with meltdowns? Of course you are. You're a toddler mom. What if there was a tool that could help you manage your own emotions and triggers better, so you can help your child return to center faster inside the meltdown moment? I am so excited to share my free guide with you. I've even recorded audio files, 5 mindful mantras for conscious moms managing toddler meltdowns. Grab it today with the link in the show notes. Then download the audios and manage meltdowns consciously. And now I'll bring you back to the rest of the episode. So you talk about this idea of a feedback loop, how shame sends shame and then reflects it back to us, and then it just keeps moving. We are conscious moms, right? We're collaborative moms. We want to hijack this shame, because the worst thing that we could ever feel is that we're leaving it as a shame legacy for our children. We're passing it on. How do we do that?
Yeah. The thing that I think is really nice is the solution, or at least step one, is super easy. It's also incredibly overwhelming. So I want to say that for people, that when I say this, there are times where I work with a lot of clients and I teach progressive muscle relaxation or things like that. And we all have had that person before when we're stressed out that's like, oh, just relax, just take a deep breath. And part of you just wants to karate chop them in the throat and be like, do you think I wouldn't be doing that if I could? So when I say this, I don't want it to come off that way to people. But what we know is that shame's kind of fuel source is silence. Shame grows in the darkness. I've had this, again, if we go back to pre-momhood, I have had shame about whether or not I was a good partner, whether or not my husband was going to want to stay with me throughout our lives. Was I, if I didn't have, when we first moved out to Portland, Oregon, and he was doing residency out here and I didn't have a job right away, was he going to resent me for that? Was he going to think something of me? If I didn't have a job and I wasn't then making all the meals, cleaning all the stuff in the house, doing all those things, what's he going to think about me? If you're on social media, whether it's a business owner, mom's just doing this for fun, how many likes do you have? How many follows do you have? How often do you select people that you're going to focus on based on these external systems? So all of us have kind of chased this external validation for a long time. We're looking for these little reactions from other people that's like, oh no, you're okay. So, and we've all done it in little ways. We'll kind of like, it's a bid for shame connection. Oh, I didn't feel like I did that really well. Or what do you think about this? And we're kind of looking for someone to be like, no, you did great. Instead of doing something, feeling excited about it, owning what we did, and then not really caring if anybody says anything about it. So when we're thinking about what do we actually do to break out of our shame, I mean, there are days where I'm like, gosh, as people that would have conversations with me would be like, just, I think, completely reframing the way they think about me as a business owner that works on shame. Because shame, the response is shame resilience. It's not shame absolution. The response is to develop a system to say, when I feel shame, what am I going to do? And the number one thing we do is we say it out loud as soon as we feel it. So again, literally my response to my husband wasn't just, am I abusive? I said, do we need to call CPS? And he goes, whoa, Walk me through how your brain got there. And my brain, it's logical. Same thing as the other day. She was having, again, any toddler mom or any toddler parent knows there are moments where they're exploring and their brain is doing these amazing things. But part of the ways they're exploring independence, part of the ways they're exploring emotional experience is to do what they can to kind of get a reaction out of you. And I saw it. I saw her looking at me, and she was doing it consciously. She would just look at me and stomp her foot and not do the thing we needed to do, and then just start screaming and stomping and yelling at me. And then as soon as I would say, seems like we're having a hard time right now regulating our emotions. We've practiced this. I was using all the things she and I agreed on that we were going to do. And she was not following protocol. And I was getting more and more elevated, more and more stressed. And then finally I was like, all right, you have 3 seconds to decide. Would you like to walk upstairs by yourself, or would you like mom to carry you upstairs? We're going to get into bed now. It was supposed to be nap time within like 15 minutes. And it was like, okay, we're not going to play. We're not going to do this. We're going upstairs and we're getting into bed. Clearly, we need some space to kind of downregulate our physiological response systems. Of course, she didn't want to do that. I picked her up. I carry her upstairs. A myriad of events happened. She kind of reached out, kind of accidentally clawed at my face a little bit. Like she cut part of my nose. I then reacted. The system, you can just see it. I'm sure any mom could feel this right now. You've had that moment where the next thing keeps amplifying it. And then what I had been doing on my own work is to realize what she's looking for is the number one thing she wants is time with me or time with whoever it is. She's not motivated by a loss of stuff. That's just not who she is. That's not how we've existed. And I don't want to do that sort of punishment, punitive thing. But what I am going to do is say, when you treat somebody this way, they don't want to be around you. And that means that you have to sit with that feeling of somebody choosing not to be around you. And that was consciously, logically, I felt really good about that decision. Shame also came in as soon as I shut the door, and she's screaming for me for 45 minutes. And my husband kept going up and saying, at kind of like Ferberizing our 3-year-old, my husband would go up and say, Mom and Dad love you so much. It's time for a nap now. We'll see you after nap. We love you so much. Take your deep breaths, hug your moose, like just would give her that love, but she wasn't getting me and she knew something wasn't right. Well, my shame went to, you scarred her. My narrative growing up is that people will leave me. I had it. I had trauma. My mom left. I had a lot of other experiences like that. So shame basically said to me, you're a terrible mom. You have jeopardized her security in you because you've shown her you're not going to be there for her. Now, again, you can hear this and know logically that's not true. If we were doing a coaching session right now, you'd be able to walk me through all that. But in that moment, that felt so true that for the rest of the day, I basically had sort of a micro depressive state existing. I couldn't function in the same way. I didn't know how to engage with her. I felt like everything was broken. And this happens to us all the time. And then the next day, things are okay or they're better. But what I needed to do in that moment, and I did, is I called a friend and I said, I think I just screwed up my relationship with my daughter, and walked through all of it. And as soon as I name it out loud and somebody else holds it and they don't immediately go, yeah, you did. You're a terrible person. You suck. You probably should have never been a mom anyways, because that's what your brain is saying. The instant someone just reflects how hard that must be to feel that or gives you an alternative response, the instant shame loses its legs. I still felt it. But what happened is my brain went, the possibilities could be different. And that's what we get is the more we say it out loud, and not in a way where we're couching it in something or we go, oh, well, I know every mom struggles with this, but no, you say the really hard thing out loud, the really scary thing that you're telling yourself, the deepest truth that you don't want anybody to know. And as soon as you can say it, shame goes, wait, what? You cut off my fuel supply. And even though it's going to scream for a second and get a little bit louder, instantly it starts to dissipate and you realize, I do feel like I'm a bad mom. I do feel that way. And that's valid. I feel that way. Given the fact I've spent 35 years telling myself that I'm not worthy of love and connection and I'm not good enough. How could I not feel that way right now? And maybe it's not that I'm a bad person. Maybe it's that I didn't handle things the way that I want to. And then that's where we can shift it. And this is where I think mom guilt can be helpful if we change the language. We can say, I didn't handle that well. I did something I didn't like. I did something bad. But the difference is then I can focus on how I want to change the action versus automatically assuming I, the mom, am bad. I, the mom, am failing. I, the person, suck at this role and no one should have given me a kid because I don't know what I'm doing.
Wow. And this totally shows us why this is the hardest, most impactful, most important job that anybody can do on the planet. Because I don't know anyone who sits in a cubicle at a desk all day and puts this much thought or energy or forecasting or outcome thinking into what they're doing. We're doing the work over here, raising a generation of human beings. Wow. I feel so connected to everything that you're saying. And it also really anchors something else you said earlier and touched on, that we need community. Now, when I talk about needing mom community, I'm very clear that not just any community will do. You've got to find yours, the one that you really align with, the people who you feel like you can trust in your most vulnerable moments. You had a friend to call, and how amazing is that? But not, Brene Brown talks about how not everyone's to be trusted with that source of yours, with that space that you need to be held in. And if moms are listening right now and they just are in a space of overwhelm and they don't have that outlet. Now, granted, they can come hop into our groups and, they can come work with me, or they can get what they need from you. But if they're just looking for a way to do this on their own day to day, if they don't have someone to call, is it enough to put a voice memo on your phone like you're talking to somebody and get it out? Is it enough to get out a pen and a journal and write it out? Does it do the same thing?
Yeah. So the short answer is, anytime we can externalize it from our brain, it's powerful. It'll be a different source of power. What I suggest to people when they do that is sometimes, just writing it down, writing everything out so you at least can hold it outside of your body. So it does help with the physiological angst that goes along with it. One of the things I have people do then is say it out loud to themselves in the mirror, and then develop some affirmations we could say back. And in that moment, our job isn't to, because if someone's like, I think I'm a terrible mom, and then you practice saying back to yourself, you're not a terrible mom, you're like, well, this is stupid and I'm never doing this again because I still feel like a terrible mom. What we need to do, it's the same thing I do with somebody with really negative body image. You don't have to love every part of your body. We just have to stop making everything so finite. So what if instead of saying you're a terrible mom, you really screwed up, what if we said, I learned something new about myself today? Or today I didn't handle being a mom the way that I wanted to. Tomorrow is a day that I'm going to try something different, and not tomorrow I'm going to be better, not the New Year's resolution idea of being a good mom and now everything's going to be perfect tomorrow and I'm never going to yell again. That just doesn't happen. I think what we have to remember is that we're navigating relationships. Interpersonal relationships are the most complex thing that we're doing on the planet. And we're doing it with little humans that don't have the capacity to have the same depth of thought and experience. And it's not that it's easier with adults. It's that with adults, what we're doing is we're all performing. So it's two people performing with their own shame stories coming into play. So both people are not really saying what they think or they feel and all that. It just feels easier because we're not actually addressing this. But I feel that same feeling when I leave an interaction with a friend and I go, oh my goodness, am I taking up too much airtime? I felt it. Shame has been here this whole time we've been recording this.
Oh,
are you talking too much? Are your experiences helpful? It's what happens. And that's, again, I don't stop and say it to say, now I need for you to reinforce that it's okay. I have to notice it and say, and even if that was what somebody else thought, this is me being authentic. And it's okay that you think that. And honestly, there's actually so Elizabeth Gilbert, who people famously kind of know her for Eat, Pray, Love, but she wrote a book called Big Magic, and she talked about creativity and fear. And one of the things that she talked about is really how she reworked her relationship with her fear about writing. And so every time fear would come into the room, she would talk about how to love it, how to nurture it, rather than just kind of avoid it. And I think this is what we need to do with our shame. Shame thinks it's being helpful. At the end of the day, it really does think it's helping you. It thinks it's giving you the system to survive in the world. It's just rooted in a lot of lies and a lot of internalized biases and cultural norms of normalized dysfunction and performance and external validation. So instead of shaming ourselves or getting angry at our shame, just noticing it. And for me, I can watch myself almost going to the meta while we're talking and go, thank you. Thank you for wanting to support me to make sure that I'm safe and okay. Right now, I'm just having a conversation with someone that I've already decided is a safe person, and we're just exploring something together. I don't need you right now. But there might be a time that I do need my fear. There might be a time that I do need my shame to kick something up. Even though we know shame isn't necessarily super helpful, it's insight. Again, the insight with the conversation with my daughter the other day, I think we were talking about this offline, around realizing I have some work to do, realizing my reactions to things with her might not have anything to do with her. And how do I then go, wow, the fact that I felt shame there, thank you for the invitation now to go deeper on where that roots into, because it actually isn't about this. And now I know something that I can do the work on. And so I think that reframing too can be really powerful, to realize that, again, your negative body image, your negative mom guilt, all these things, they think they're being helpful. They're just connected to systems of oppression. So instead, just say, of course I feel that way. That makes total sense. I live in a world that makes it so women are supposed to have it all together. We're silent sufferers that are supposed to take care of everybody else. And as moms, we're supposed to be perfect at it. And the expectation unfairly still, no matter what we do in terms of gender equality, is going to fall on us. That's what it is. That's where it's at least for our lifetimes now. So of course I feel that way. Now, what choices do I want to make knowing that I'm going to be presented with that so I don't get stuck there? Because at the end of it, the thing I lean into, I don't like myself when I listen to my shame. I am not the person I want to be. I'm not authentic. I spend more time trying to get people's approval than I am being honest. And I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. I feel unseen. I feel resentful of other people. I feel just an all around icky feeling. So I then say, gosh, I'm going to try something different. And it might be scary and hard and it might suck. And so again, in our instances, maybe it's reaching out to you or to me. In my case, I actually talk to people who don't have kids. I'm very fortunate to have several friends that don't want kids. I really like talking to non-moms about this stuff, because then I can just kind of talk through it and we can look at it not just about mom to mom, what we're going through. Sometimes that's super helpful for me. But for me, what's really helpful is another person that's like, this is what I'm seeing, just like interpersonal stuff. Like one of my friends the other day, Alex, she just called out something that was just like, this seems like a human to human interaction piece I'm noticing between you and Everly and you and Jordan, my husband, and where these things were happening. What would it look like to say that, or to get space from that, or what's helped in other relationships? And it's like, whoa, then it doesn't become sort of the micro scrutiny on mom stuff or fixing mom. It expands it out for me to go, this is a human interaction problem that I'm just navigating, and I can bring in some other skills and ideas for what I need, and realize that it's going to manifest maybe in a tantrum in this case, but adults have tantrums too. They just look different. What do I do in those moments to help me there too?
Wow. Oh my gosh. So many things. First of all, people are going to need to listen. I'm going to need to listen to this back multiple times, because there's just so much goodness here. And that comes from being authentic, right? That's when the true magic comes out. So thank you. Thank you for following your own guide and doing that. Secondly, the reframe that you talked about, it's basically just speaking the truth, speaking a true narrating for yourself what true thing just happened, a truth and acceptance statement. And that's that. And the other thing that really rang true for me when you were talking just now, as moms, we always say, and it's rather a glib, uplifting, like funny face emoji statement at the end saying, oh, as long as I'm okay, everybody's okay. But that is the actual truth. This, what you're talking about, is the true definition of self-care. And if we do this work, then the way we interact with our partners, the way we interact with our kids, the way we interact with the person at the grocery store is so different that it really does mean that because we are okay and confident and clear and addressing our shame for what it is and allowing it and saying, no, thank you, not right now, we can be better people to everybody else. Oh, Kyra, I told you before we started recording that I knew this was going to be a killer episode. It was even more than I even could have imagined. Thank you so much for your expertise, your voice, your vulnerability. We are so blessed to have had you on this podcast, and we hope you come back again someday.
Oh, I would love it. Thank you for creating a safe space. I think that's the biggest thing. The authenticity comes from all of us co-creating safe spaces to start to do these things so we can have what in therapy we call corrective emotional experiences, to realize when I do say something out loud, it doesn't my fear brain isn't right. It's not going to go terrible. Or in the past, when maybe it hasn't gone well, in the future, it might look different. And I think then that kind of helps all of us go, how great would it be if in the interactions we could just tell people the stories that we're living in, the things that we think, the things that we feel, and how it changes the way we function. And so thank you for creating a safe space, not only for me, but for other guests and for moms to be listening and just allowing themselves to be a part of that and to realize that it's okay to take the mask off and that we're not going to see anything that is different than what we're all feeling. We're going to see something that actually unites us and then allows us to lean into that beauty in a very different way.
Yes. Amazing. Oh, so if everyone is feeling the way I'm feeling and wants to learn more about you, what you do, how you do it, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, so they can visit my website, adversityrising.com. I have tons of different links, information there. I try to break it down based on people's learning styles. So links to my YouTube channel or other videos that I create, podcasts I've guested on like this one, programs that I do, book clubs, things like that I have available. It's a great way for people to check out all the different things that I offer. And then I don't do any social media. And so if people want to reach out, I just love, well, I guess it's not good old fashioned mail because it's email, but just sending me an email. I love to connect with people that way and just have more of that kind of hands-on touch with an interaction to help somebody figure out what support could look like or just to connect with what's sitting with them.
Wow, that is fantastic. When you say that, it says to me that it's an interpersonal skill, right? Email has become an interpersonal skill because it really takes a touch and an intention from us, as opposed to some social media click, this, that, the other upload. Wow. All right, everybody. Well, all these links and all this information will be in the show notes. Again, Kyira, thank you so much for your time. I know it's incredibly valuable. And thank you for being a voice of change.
Oh, thank you.
Do you love listening to this podcast, but wish that you could see us while we're talking and engaging and emoting? Well, I have great news for you. We now have an opportunity for you to join our video membership access. For only $7 a month, every single guest episode, unedited, no ads, and all the wonderful things that we say and do are available to you on our Patreon account. Hop on over with the link in the show notes and choose the level that you'd like to support the show. Again, for $7 a month, all video access is available to you. You can go back and forth throughout the episode. You can make sure to highlight your favorite parts. Watch it over and over if it really resonated with you to get those strategies and those intentional language just down the way you want. Would love to have you in there to better support you in your journey of conscious and collaborative parenting. Thank you, Mama, for making time for yourself and prioritizing your parenting, listening to this podcast. Until the next episode, stay mindful and proactive as you transform the toddler years.